6 months had passed since that rainy night at the underground tech market, and Rodriguez Technologies had become the talk of the financial district. What started as a failing startup operating out of a cramped office had transformed into one of the most successful trading firms in the city. Maya stood by the window of their new office on the 15th floor, looking down at the busy streets below. She could hardly believe this was her life now. The same woman who had been eating instant noodles and struggling to pay rent was now the chief technology officer of a company that managed millions of databins and investments. The growth had been incredible. Their client base had exploded from a few dozen struggling investors to over 3,000 satisfied customers. People who had lost money with other firms were now seeing consistent profits month after month. The algorithm that everyone had laughed at was now generating returns that seemed almost magical. But success brought new challenges. Every day, Maya and James received calls from competitors trying to poach their talent, investors wanting to buy them out, and reporters asking about their secret formula. The same people who had rejected Maya's work were now desperate to get their hands on it. The first sign that their story was about to become public came on a Tuesday morning. Maya was reviewing the latest performance reports when James burst into her office, holding a newspaper. "You need to see this," he said, spreading the paper across her desk. The headline read, "Local Startups' Incredible Rise, from Bankruptcy to Millions in 6 months." The article detailed Rodriguez Technologies' transformation. But what caught Maya's attention was a small paragraph near the end. Sources close to the company suggest that their success is built on a revolutionary algorithm acquired for an unusually low price earlier this year. Maya felt her stomach drop. They're digging into the story. Over the next few weeks, more reporters started asking questions. Tech journalist named Rebecca Williams had become particularly interested in uncovering the truth behind their success. She called repeatedly, visited their office, and even tried to interview former employees of the companies that had rejected Maya. James tried to protect Maya from the attention, but the truth was becoming harder to hide. Patent filings and early development documents had Maya's name all over them. Her signature was on contracts, her code was in the systems foundation, and her fingerprints were on every major innovation. The story finally broke on a Thursday evening. Rebecca Williams published a detailed investigation titled "The 5-Credit Algorithm That Changed Everything." The article told Maya's entire story. From her struggles and rejections to her eventual success with James. Maya's phone started ringing. Immediately, text messages flooded in from people she hadn't heard from in years. Her social media accounts exploded with friend requests and messages. Some were congratulatory, but others were clearly from people who wanted something from her. The most surprising, calls came from the investors who had rejected her just months earlier. Victor Harrison from Tech Venture Capital was the first to reach out. "Maya, congratulations on your success," he said in a voice that sounded completely different from the dismissive tone he had used during their first meeting. "I've been following your company's progress, and I have to admit, we may have made an error in judgment." Maya listened politely as he offered partnership deals, investment opportunities, and consulting contracts worth millions of dollars. He talked about how impressed he was with her work and how much his firm would love to collaborate with her. "I appreciate your interest, Mr. Harrison," Maya said calmly. "But I'm curious about something. 6 months ago, you called my work amateur and said I was completely out of touch with reality. What's changed?" There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. "Well, obviously, your algorithm has proven its value in the market. So, the algorithm is the same as it was 6 months ago. The only thing that's changed is that someone else validated it first." I could hear him struggling for a response. "Business is about timing, Maya. Perhaps the market wasn't ready for your innovation when we first met." "No, Mr. Harrison. The market was ready. You just weren't willing to look past your assumptions to see the real value." Similar conversations happened with every investor who had rejected her. They all had excuses, explanations about market conditions, or timing, or strategic priorities. Maya saw through all of it. They hadn't rejected her algorithm because it was bad. They had rejected it because they couldn't see past their own biases. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the tech community. The woman they had called broken was now turning away million-dollar offers. The algorithm they had dismissed as worthless was now the foundation of a company worth more than many of their successful investments. James watched Maya handle each conversation with grace and dignity. She was polite but firm, professional but unforgiving. She remembered every dismissive comment, every condescending laugh, every moment when someone had made her feel small. "How does it feel?" James asked her, after she finished another call with a former rejecter. Maya thought for a moment. "It feels like justice, but not the angry kind." The media attention brought unexpected opportunities. Universities wanted Maya to speak at conferences. Tech companies offered her consulting contracts. Venture capital firms invited her to be a guest speaker at their events. But the attention also brought pressure. Competitors were trying to reverse engineer their algorithm. Hackers attempted to break into their systems. Government regulators started asking questions about their trading methods. Through it all, James remained Maya's closest ally and protector. Their partnership had grown into something deeper than business. They had become genuine friends who understood each other's struggles and dreams. "You know what's funny?" Maya said one evening as they worked late in their new office. 6 months ago, I would have given anything for just one of these people to take me seriously. Now that they all want to work with me, I realize I don't need their approval anymore." James smiled. "That's the real victory. Not the money or the success, but the confidence to know your own worth." Maya nodded, looking out at the city lights. Below, she had learned that true validation doesn't come from others recognizing your value. It comes from never doubting it in the first place. James Rodriguez never planned to be at the underground tech bazaar that rainy Thursday evening. He was supposed to be home, eating leftover pizza and watching old movies like he did most nights. But his boss had called an emergency meeting that afternoon, and the news wasn't good. Their small startup was failing. Again, James worked as a mid-level analyst at a company that barely had enough money to keep the lights on. This was his third startup job in 2 years, and he was starting to wonder if he was cursed. Every company he joined seemed to fall apart within months. "We need something big and we need it fast," his boss had said during the meeting. "Otherwise, we'll have to shut down by next month." James left the office feeling defeated. 31, he felt like he was going nowhere fast. He had a degree in computer science and years of experience, but somehow he always ended up at companies that were one step away from bankruptcy. His savings account was almost empty, and his rent was due in a week. He was walking home in the rain when he saw the flyer taped to a lamppost. The paper was wet and starting to fall apart. But he could still read the words, "Underground Tech Market, tonight only. Hidden gems and breakthrough technology." James almost kept walking. He had been to these kinds of events before. They were usually filled with people selling outdated equipment or half-finished projects that would never work. But something made him stop. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was desperation. The address led him to a basement beneath an old bookstore. The stairs creaked as he walked down, and he could hear voices and electronic music coming from below. The basement was dimly lit, with small booths set up along the walls. People wandered around looking at various gadgets, software demonstrations, and prototype devices. Most of the vendors looked confident, almost aggressive in their sales pitches. They had flashy displays and loud voices, trying to grab attention. From anyone who walked by, James browsed for about an hour, but nothing caught his interest. Everything seemed overpriced, or too good to be true. He was about to leave when he spotted a small table in the darkest corner of the room. A young woman sat behind it, and she looked completely different from all the other vendors. While everyone else was trying to grab attention, she seemed to be trying to disappear. Her setup was simple: a folding table, a handwritten sign, and an old laptop that had seen better days. The sign read, "Revolutionary AI Algorithm, 5 credits. Serious inquiries only." Most people walked past her booth without even slowing down. James approached slowly. The woman looked up at him with surprised eyes, as if she couldn't believe someone was actually stopping to talk to her. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she kept glancing around nervously. "Hi," James said softly, sitting down in the empty chair across from her makeshift desk. "Can you tell me about your algorithm?" The woman blinked several times, like she wasn't sure she had heard him correctly. You want to know about my work? Yes, I do. She took a deep breath and introduced herself as Maya, as she began. To explain her algorithm, James could see her confidence slowly returning. She talked about market patterns, emotional indicators, and data processing in a way that showed she truly understood her subject. But what really caught James's attention wasn't just what she was saying, but how she was saying it. Maya spoke with the passion of someone who had discovered something truly special. Her eyes lit up when she talked about her code, and she gestured excitedly as she explained complex concepts. Most people think market prediction is just about numbers, Maya said, pulling up test results on her laptop. But markets are driven by human emotions: fear, greed, hope, panic. My algorithm doesn't just look at data, it understands the psychology behind the data. James leaned forward, genuinely interested. He had worked with market analysis software before, and he knew how difficult it was to achieve consistent accuracy. But Maya's test results showed something he had never seen before. These accuracy rates, James said, pointing at her screen. Are these real? Maya nodded eagerly. I've been testing it for months. The algorithm gets better over time because it learns from its mistakes. It's not perfect, but it's more accurate than anything else I've seen. James asked technical questions, and Maya answered them all with confidence and detail. She showed him code samples, explained her methodology, and walked him through case studies. The more she talked, the more impressed he became. This wasn't some amateur project thrown together in a weekend. This was sophisticated, elegant work that solved real problems in creative ways. James couldn't understand why no one else seemed interested. How long have you been trying to sell this? He asked. Maya's face fell slightly. 3 months. I've talked to every major investor in the city. They all say the same thing. It's too simple, too basic, not worth their time. James shook his head. In disbelief, he had seen million-dollar algorithms that were far less impressive than what Maya had created. The problem wasn't with her work. It was with people who couldn't recognize quality when they saw it. I want to buy it, James said simply. Maya stared at him in shock. What? Your algorithm? I want to buy it. 5 credits, right? You're serious? James pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. His account balance was painfully low, but he had just enough to cover the 5 credits. Without hesitation, he initiated the transfer. Maya watched the transaction process with tears forming in her eyes. When the confirmation appeared on her phone, she covered her face with her hands and started crying.
Thank you,
she whispered. You have no idea what this means to me. James did have an idea. He'd been in similar situations before, feeling like the world was against him. He knew what it was like to believe in something that no one else could see. Can I ask you something? James said as Maya composed herself. Would you be interested in working together? My company needs exactly what you've created. Maya looked up at him with hope in her eyes for the first time in months. Really? Really? I think we could help each other. They exchanged contact. Information. James felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Excitement about the future. He had just spent his last 5 credits, but somehow he felt richer than he had in years. James couldn't sleep that night. Kept thinking about Maya and her algorithm, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life or the smartest decision he'd ever made. 5 credits was all the money he had left, and he had spent it on technology that everyone else had rejected. But something deep inside told him he was right. The way Maya had explained her work, the passion in her voice, the elegant simplicity of her approach, it all felt genuine in a way that most tech presentations didn't. The next morning, James arrived at his office early, the startup occupied. A small floor in an old building, with mismatched furniture and computers that should have been replaced years ago. His boss David was already there, looking stressed as usual. We need to talk, David said as soon as he saw James. The investors are pulling out. We have maybe 2 weeks before we have to shut everything down. James took a deep breath. Actually, I might have something that could help. He spent the next hour explaining about Maya's algorithm and showing David the test results. David listened with growing interest, but James could see the skepticism in his eyes. You bought this from some random person at an underground market? David asked. With your own money? I know how it sounds, but look at these numbers. This could change everything for us. David stared at the data for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Okay. We've got nothing to lose at this point. See what you can do with it. James spent the next 3 days diving deep into Maya's code. What he found amazed him. The algorithm wasn't just clever, it was brilliant. Maya had approached market prediction from a completely different angle than anyone else he knew. Most trading algorithms focused purely on historical data and mathematical patterns. But Maya's system also analyzed news sentiment, social media, trends, and even weather patterns that might affect human psychology. It was like she had created an artificial brain that understood not just numbers, but human behavior. James started running small tests, feeding the algorithm real market data from the past year. The results were incredible, Maya's system predicted. Market movements with an accuracy that seemed almost impossible. He called Maya on Thursday evening. How's it going? She asked nervously. Is everything working okay? Maya, this is extraordinary, James said. I've been testing your algorithm for 3 days straight, and it's performing better than anything I've ever seen. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Maya's voice, barely a whisper. Really? In fact, I was wondering. If you'd like to come in and see it in action, maybe we could work together to optimize it for our platform. Maya arrived at James's office the next morning carrying a worn backpack and looking around nervously. The office was small and crowded. Nothing like the fancy, corporate buildings where she had been rejected so many times. This is it? She asked. James laughed. I know it's not much to look at, but we're scrappy. Sometimes the best innovations come from places like this. He showed Maya how her algorithm was performing on their trading platform. Her eyes grew wider with each screen of data he displayed. It's even better than I hoped, she said softly. The live market data is giving it patterns I never saw in my tests. Over the next week, James and Maya worked together to integrate the algorithm fully into the company's systems. Maya suggested improvements that James never would have thought of. While James helped her understand the practical business applications of her work, their first live trading session was on a Tuesday morning. James, Maya, and David gathered around a computer screen, watching as the algorithm analyzed market conditions and made its first real prediction. It's recommending we buy shares in a small energy company, Maya said, reading the output. Confidence level is 89%. David looked nervous. That's a lot of money to risk on an untested system. It's not untested, James said firmly. We've been testing it for 2 weeks. Every prediction has been accurate. They made the trade. Within 4 hours, the energy company announced a major contract, and their stock price jumped 23%. The algorithm had been right. Word spread quickly through their small client base. Investors who had been losing money for months suddenly started seeing profits. Their client calls went from complaints to congratulations. By the end of the first month, their trading accuracy had improved by over 300%. Clients were recommending them to friends and colleagues. Money that had been flowing out of the company suddenly started flowing back in. Maya couldn't believe what was happening. For the first time in months, she had money in her bank account. James made sure she received substantial consulting fees for her ongoing work, and she was able to move out of her tiny apartment into a proper workspace. But more important than the money was the feeling of validation. Every day, Maya's algorithm proved that her work had value. The same technology that investors had called broken and worthless is now generating profits for dozens of clients. James watched Maya's confidence grow with each successful prediction. She started suggesting new features and improvements, her creative mind unleashing ideas that had been suppressed by months of rejection. You know what the best part is? Maya said one evening as they worked late in the office. It's not just about proving them wrong. It's about proving to myself that I was right to believe in this. James smiled. You were always right. You just needed someone to give you a chance to prove it. Their partnership was becoming something neither of them had expected. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about two people who understood what it meant to struggle, helping each other succeed. The algorithm that had been worth just 5 credits was now the foundation of a growing business. But more importantly, it had given both Maya and James something they had been searching for: proof that good work, combined with mutual respect and genuine belief, could overcome any amount of rejection and doubt. As their first month of profits was finalized, James looked at the numbers and shook his head in amazement. They had gone from bankruptcy to profitability in just 4 weeks, all because he had decided to listen when everyone else had chosen to laugh. 2 years after that life-changing night in the underground marketplace, Maya stood on the stage of the Global Tech Summit, looking out at an audience of over 5,000 people. The bright lights made it difficult to see individual faces, but she could feel the energy in the room. These were the same kinds of people who had once dismissed her work, and now they were hanging on her every word. "When I first created my algorithm," Maya began, her voice steady and confident, "I believed it would change how we understand market prediction. What I didn't expect was how much it would change me." The audience listened intently as Maya told her story. She talked about the rejections, the nights when she questioned everything about herself, and the moment when one person decided to see potential instead of problems. There were no notes in front of her. She knew the story by heart because she had lived every difficult moment of it. Rodriguez Technologies had grown beyond anyone's wildest dreams. Their company now employed over 200 people and managed billions of dollars in investments. The algorithm that had once been worth just 5 credits was now the foundation of a platform used by financial institutions across 6 countries. But Maya's speech wasn't really about business success. It was about something much more important. "The real breakthrough wasn't in my code," she continued. "It was learning that innovation often comes from the people society overlooks. The quiet voices in the corner, the ones who think differently, the ones who don't fit into traditional boxes." After her keynote address, Maya was surrounded by reporters and industry leaders wanting to shake her hand and get photos. Conversation that mattered most to her happened backstage. A young man approached her nervously, clutching a tablet in his hands. He looked to be about 25, with tired eyes and clothes that had seen better days. "Ms. Chen, I'm sorry to bother you," he said quietly. "My name is David Kim, and I've been working on something for the past 2 years. Everyone says it's not commercial enough, that there's no market for it." Maya looked at the determination in his eyes and immediately saw herself from 3 years ago. "Tell me about your work." David explained his project, a new type of battery technology that could revolutionize electric vehicles. His approach was unconventional. Traditional investors couldn't understand why someone would pursue such a different path. "How much are you asking for?" Maya asked. "Just enough to build a proper prototype, maybe 10 credits?" Maya smiled, remembering her own desperate price of 5 credits. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone. "Consider it done. But more than that, I want to introduce you to some people who might be able to help." This wasn't an isolated incident. Ever since Maya's story had become public, she had been approached by dozens of innovators who faced the same dismissive attitude she had encountered. She realized that her success gave her a unique opportunity to help others who were struggling to be heard. That's when Maya and James decided to create the Recognition Fund. It started as a simple idea: provide small investments and mentorship to developers whose work was considered too risky or not commercially viable by traditional investors. The fund's first office was set up in the same basement where Maya and James had met. They renovated the space and created a proper innovation hub, complete with workstations, meeting rooms, and presentation areas. A small plaque by the entrance commemorated that original tech market, where 5 credits changed everything. Maya insisted on being personally involved in every investment decision. She reviewed applications herself, met with entrepreneurs, and used her own experience to identify those who just needed someone to believe in them. The results were remarkable. Within the first year, the Recognition Fund had invested in 47 different projects. Not all of them succeeded, but the ones that did made headlines. A new water purification system that could help communities in developing countries. A mental health app that used innovative therapy techniques. A sustainable farming method that increased crop yields while protecting the environment. But Maya's proudest moment came when she received a letter from David Kim, the young man she had met at the conference. His battery technology had not only worked, but had been acquired by a major automotive company for $50 million. "Dear Maya," the letter read, You didn't just invest in my technology, you invested in my belief that I was on the right path. That made all the difference. James often marveled at how their lives had changed. He was now the CEO of a successful company, but more importantly, he had learned the value of recognizing potential in unexpected places. Their partnership had taught him that the best investments weren't always about money. They were about people. The underground tech market had become legendary in innovation circles. Every Thursday evening, the basement buzzed with activity as new entrepreneurs gathered to share their ideas. Maya and James regularly attended these events, not as successful executives, but as mentors who remembered what it felt like to struggle. Maya's story had become required reading in several business schools, used as a case study in recognizing value and overcoming bias. But she always emphasized that the real lesson wasn't about her individual success. Change doesn't happen when successful people get more successful, she would tell students. It happens when we lift up the voices that society has chosen to ignore. On quiet evenings, Maya would sometimes return to her old apartment building, just to remember where she had come from. The tiny kitchen table where she had worked on her algorithm was still there in her memory. Along with the desperation and hope that had driven her forward, she thought about all the people who had called her broken, who had laughed at her price, who had dismissed her dreams. She felt no anger toward them anymore. A rejection had led her to James, and together they had built something more meaningful than either could have imagined alone. The market had laughed at her price. The end. Her true worth hadn't been measured in credits or dollars. It had been measured in the lives she touched, the innovations she supported, and the belief she sparked in others who dared to dream differently. Maya's algorithm still ran at the heart of Rodriguez Technologies. More sophisticated now, but built on the same foundation of understanding human behavior and market psychology. But her real legacy was something much more powerful, a movement that recognized potential wherever it might be hiding, waiting for someone wise enough to see its true value.